The trip to the unwanted. The silent canoe trip down into the swollen swamp was so silent that it would have felt like a lack of intensity. With spending most of your time in the steep city with the hustle and the piercing sound of the concrete city would have left your ears. It was the same feeling on your first night out camping. The silence would be almost unpleasant. The sound of nothing. But there was the sound of nature, and you just had to appreciate that. Try spending the first night out by a quiet lake, and the silence of nature would be too much to bear. If you could not get back the days of your youth on an adventure like this, you would have lost an important part of who you were. Taking life for granted, as you always did in the distant, your shadow was seen in the brightness of the sunlight as it filtered through the trees, left behind a silhouette of a little boy or little girl on the water. Lost youth, and it tried to keep up, but it would never happen. How could it happen to you when you were young? You would only know that the adventure and the make-believe, a trait of a fantasy world where nothing ever mattered. There was no responsibility for anything. A perfect world. Why would anyone want to leave their youth? That is why the adventure of the treehouse was the perfect setting, so far away that this cry for help was useless. The canoe trip led up to the treehouse, which was built many years ago by the people unknown. The only way to this treehouse was by boat, raft, or canoe. Many used it, and it was the perfect hideout. Such a simple moving in a simple trip in a canoe on water or boat under the giant trees, with all the nature at your side. The waves from the canoe or boat would have made you feel somewhat balanced, but made the feeling of peace within the surroundings. Not many knew what was in the middle of the swamp, but a few did use the canoe regular. This canoe was left by who knows, and there it was for everyone to use. As you moved up to the house, whereas there was always a fog that was a foot thick. It's a treehouse hiding in a swamp, by the way, and it hung just above the water, this fog. As you got close, all you could see was the edge of the dock. The thick moss hung down from the trees, almost covering the dock, the perfect cover for the treehouse. It did not want to be found. Moss hung down so thick that you couldn't move through it to get to the dock, but you could because you wanted to. Doing this would have given a fresh smell in the air as well. The moss was refreshing and cleansing to get into it. There wasn't any other way than that crooked dock to get into the treehouse. The boards on the dock would make a warning sound to the treehouse, as if the house needed a sound of warning. You would have to struggle to get to the ends of the dock, and it seemed to take forever. Sorry. I had to get some breath there for a minute. It's okay, I'm good. A tattered rope ladder hung down to the other end of the dock. Looking up to this ladder did not give you so much as a few feet of sight, as it was covered in thick vines, and yes, again, the sweet-smelling moss could have made it up the rope ladder which led up to the tree. It wasn't for the lightning bugs all around the swamp giving the tree a house, a form of magic in nature. You could actually take it in as pure, until you gave someone the house a solar cell, which gave an uneasy feeling of false life. Some idiot put the solar cell there and gave it electricity. It was plastic and cheap, like patio lanterns that hung out on a deck. You always wanted to get rid of it. It was the closest thing to civilization that you did not need because you were out there. To get to the treehouse in the swamp first, then to the treehouse, you had to go through a cow pasture. This was where the paddles grow. Paddles. Look it up. And you could not pass without picking. In most cases, eating some of the paddles that grew wild and edible were everywhere in the valley which led down to the swamp. You could bend down on your knees into the soft, sweet bluegrass. This grew in the meadow everywhere and covered the field like a blanket. Poking out from the tips of the grasses, you could make out the tiny mushrooms. There, I told you, poking through the blades. The locals set up signs and warned everyone not to eat too many. So after eating them, it would take only a few minutes, maybe no more than 15. This would lead you to a journey into the swamp or just out into the field of many colors and dragons, which always, in the end, turned into cows. I hope you enjoyed this, Into the Swamp. Another story written within the Book of Spells. Good night.